How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
And welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast, along with my partners Brian Siegler and Tally. I am Curtis Wilson, and this episode is presented by Dr. Lord Jeremy Counts at the Main Street Pharmacy. If you love this podcast, the Hokies, the town of Blacksburg, make sure you are supporting the Main Street Pharmacy.
Whether you need prescriptions, a tube of toothpaste, or just want to say hello, let Jeremy and his team take care of you. The money you spend at Main Street Pharmacy goes towards the things you support. So next time you're in Blacksburg, head on down to 301 South Main Street. Fellas, we got a big one on the slate tonight. We got a lot of topics to cover. We got some wrestling talk. We got some recruiting talk. We're going to talk some new coaches. We got a little bit of women's hoops talk to go through. So we got a full slate tonight.
We are jam-packed, Tally.
Yeah, pretty packed up, man. Ready to go.
Everything. In just a little while here, Matej Sis from 247 going to jump on with us to talk all things recruiting. We're going to be talking with the new hires with him. A lot to unload there. I think a couple curveballs. I think names we had heard were not what we saw. But we're going to talk about that later. But we're going to kick off this evening. Me and Brian got to sit down with one of my really good friends by the name of David Fuqua. David's one of my fraternity brothers. I've known him almost 20 years of my life. He was a Division II wrestler down at Longwood, and he is a Hokie wrestling aficionado. And when I talked to him this few weeks ago about doing it, me and Brian and him were thinking, 10, 15, 20 minutes. We got 30 minutes worth of content, and it's jam-packed as the Hokies are in the wrestling national finals starting on the 16th, so starting Thursday, with a chance. So we're going to get to that first. So Brian, without further ado, I'll let you punch the tape on that, and then we will be coming back.
All right, here we go. We got David Fuqua interview airing right now, Bellas.
Our podcast listeners, tonight we have a very special guest with a few days away from Wrestling Nationals. I've talked about him all year. I mentioned the name David Fuqua. David, my fraternity brother, the man who took me to my personal greatest moment in Lane Stadium, 2005 Georgia Tech game day. For some reason, he gave me a ticket to come with him that night. I still don't know why, but ever since then, always been my brother. But David was a wrestler at Longwood. David is a very, very connoisseur of Hokie wrestling. He follows them very closely. And as I was joking with him today as the wrestling the stuff come out, Brian, he literally is last night going through in his office. He's a CPA, so he's working his ass off this time of year. He's literally going through seeing how far can each Tech wrestler get. So we're going to bring him on tonight to talk about the season end nationals. Boundary Corner podcast listeners, give a warm welcome to one of my best friends, David Fuqua.
Hi, Curtis.
David, how's it going tonight?
Good. How about you? How are you guys doing?
We're doing good, brother. We're doing good, man. I mean, talking Hokies football, basketball, which let's not talk about what happened last night. That was ugly. Lots of good things, but man, Hokie wrestling, you know, you grew up down in the area. You grew up in Vinton, and you wrestled. Did you ever think Hokie wrestling would get where it is right now?
Definitely not. I mean, there was talks where they were going to get rid of the program. I know, especially even after before Kevin Dresser came on, and when Brands went to Iowa, I think they were about 24 hours away from dropping the program.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
what a
I knew it was
turnaround
close.
they
I didn't
did.
know it was that close.
It was close. I think they were working on the PR and actually, writing stuff up, and we're going to issue stuff out. But then Dresser came on, and he jumped in there and took the coaching position, and obviously they are where they are now. Him leading, and then now Coach Roby helping out. It's perfect.
It is perfect.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about this season and how that's going. Like going into this season, kind of what were your expectations for the team?
Well, I mean, I was excited. There's a couple weight classes that there were some battles for starting positions. 125 with having Eddie and then having Cooper there going on, for a battle there. Even at 141, didn't know if Tampa Tom was going to be able to take over, and be able to take that spot. So, and he actually did, beating out Colin on that, which he was a qualifier, a couple times already. So that was impressive in itself. And then even at 65, we had a transfer in from Chattanooga, Drew Nicholson, who he was a qualifier and coming in to battle Connor Brady too. So that, and then as well as 197 with Andy Smith, or the junkyard dog. I don't know if he was gonna who was gonna take that on. So you had some solid guys. Obviously, coming back was Andonian and Mackay and Matona. So you had your core group there. So I was excited. There's definitely was thinking they were going to be able to go and get a dual championship and even conference championship, at least fight for it. So I was excited to see where they're going, what they were planning on doing. And they had some tough tests early on. Ohio State, they definitely do their schedule right by testing themselves early and seeing where they're at, see where they need to be. So I mean that was kind of what I was expecting. And ultimately overall it was probably right where I expected them to be. And you had some guys jump out and some others that might have been a little bit disappointing at times, but it's wrestling. It's a tough, long season. So ebbs and flows.
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, top 10 ranking again. I think any Hokie sports fan, you see that, they're going to be good. You mentioned Ohio State. Ohio State's a good program, beating Mizzou. I mean, I'm looking at the championship. Mizzou's got guys all over the place that qualified. So they're a quality program. Cornell, and playing, obviously, the ACC with NC State and Pitt. But let me ask this, and I don't want you to have to bust anybody, but let's just be realistic. What wrestler this year has exceeded your expectations? And who didn't quite hit where you thought they'd be, or maybe in their development, for this season?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, the one that is exceeded is, the number 4 seed, Caleb Henson. I mean, immediately he came in. He was a highly touted recruit. I mean, he's a true freshman starting. And the first dual meet that he had was against number 2 ranked Sammy Sasso of Ohio State, and he takes him out. So right off the bat, I was super impressed. And, and he ended up just losing. He lost 3 times. One to Yanni, the number 1 ranked guy. Another one was to Mahler from Mizzou, who is I think he's the 8th seed, I believe. And then you got the 12th seed, Zap from Penn. Those are his 3 losses. So it's not like he lost to one of us coming in there and wrestling. So he's got some quality, and he's got some quality wins too. Like I said, he beat Sasso. He's got some other top victories under his belt. So he can do some damage. And on the flip side of that, I mean, like I said, I was excited about everything. And one person that kind of, it is what it is. But, I was excited for Connor Brady to see what he was going to do this year. And he had some very tough matches, and it was a string of matches, especially early on in ACC play where he lost to NC State, and then he lost to Pitt. And I mean, they were close, tough, tight matches. And so it's just like disappointing because he's got that factor to where he can really turn it on and do something. I mean, he was the number 9 overall ranked recruit in the nation when he came in. And he was number 2 or 3 in his weight class. So it's just like, all right, when are we going to turn it on? Let's go. Let's see this. And so I was a little disappointed, but you know what? ACC tournament showed up, and he revenge. He got a revenge win, and he beat Holden, and then he got in there and he went for the championship. So and he almost came out victorious in the finals too. So he definitely redeemed himself in my eyes on that. So it was just, again, like I was talking about earlier, it's ebbs and flows. So you might have a lull and be down, but there's no, if you peak at the right time, that everybody forgets about that.
Yep. And that's good to hear, kind of talking about the highs and lows on that front. But let's talk about this. What, in your opinion, has been the absolute highlight from a team perspective, looking back on the season to this point?
Well, if you follow wrestling for Tech, our biggest rival is NC State. So the fact that they have a 1 beside their record, and that's the only loss that they have all year, is
there we go.
When we took them out. That's definitely the high right now. Hopefully, in a week and a half, or at the end of the week, hopefully we can, have another little high and actually see if we can bring home some hardware being the top 4. It's definitely a potential, but they definitely got to have a good tournament, kind of reminiscent of how 2016 was, and in order to get that hardware. But yeah, that's the high that I have, and beating NC State is always good. And it's always nice to prevent them from having an undefeated season.
Yep, and that win effectively split the regular season championship between the Hokies and the Wolfpack. And also, that was the night, I think, me as a Hokie fan in watching wrestling, that was a night that took it big. 5,900 people in Castle. That place was rocking. And it was the local kid, Andy Smith, that got that point where they knew they may tie us, but they cannot win. They cannot win this. They cannot win this duel. You have to help me with the definitions there. I text him all the time, by the way, during the matches. So why did this happen? Are we going to be able to win? Because the Pit, I missed like the first 3 matches. I text him. He's like, we can't win anything. I'm like, it's only 3 matches in. And
I told him, because I was talking to him about, the rankings of who was expected to win. And that NC State match was a roller coaster ride in itself. We had an upset. We got upset. Bolin almost upset the number 2 guy in the nation. Had him down 3. He was up 3-0, and ended up losing it at the end. But and then that's how I was like, okay, since Bolin couldn't take that out, and that was again where I was talking about how Connor Brady had kind of was a little disappointment because he was ranked higher and projected. It was a coin flip, but he was ranked higher than his opponent, and he ended up losing that. And that's how I was like, okay, this is really going to be coming down to we're going to need one of these 3 guys at the end, whether it was Bolin or Smith or or Katka winning and getting an upset. So then Bolin was coming out there, and I was like, okay, he might get it, and then he ended up losing it in overtime. We lost 4 overtime matches in that dual meet. So we're right there with them. And the fact that we got that from Andy Smith, that was perfect, and it was definitely exciting, and he earned it, and he did a great job. So I mean, that was definitely the high point for sure.
Awesome. All right, so in the ACC tournament last weekend, Tech finishes second behind NC State. They get 2 individual titles. How important is the conference championships in wrestling in the grand scheme of things as compared to the regular season?
You talking about individual or overall team?
Give me both, because I feel like, isn't that where Makai got hurt last year and effectively he may have missed a chance of winning another national title?
He got hurt. It was a couple years ago, where, and I think it was in the dual meet right going in before that.
Okay.
And he got hurt wrestling. I think it was against Pitt. And he got hurt there, but then he ended up wrestling, and then he actually just medical forfeit so he could save himself. But
okay, gotcha.
It is important because especially this year with the seeding, it's a weighted. The way that they do seeding, you never know what's going to happen, whether they're going away, whether it's actual winning percentage or the RPI of who you beat. So this year it looks like, based off these seedings, that conference champions got a bump in the rankings and in their seedings for the year. So because there's definitely some people that have one loss, but they might be seeded, 8th, 9th, or 10th because they didn't win their conference championship. And then there's another, so the winning the individual weight class definitely is helpful for seeding for NCAA tournament. And and that pays, and that shows you because, Caleb Henson is ranked across the board like 7th or 8th, amongst, the coaches and across Intermat and Flow Wrestling, and end up with the 4 seed. Yeah. Was that conference championship. So, and I think he definitely deserves that, but, we'll see how it all plays out, but, winning that championship for individual is good. And then winning it as a team is definitely, bragging rights. It's, especially with there's only 6 teams in the ACC, definitely want to have that. You want to have that, that bragging rights. And NC State, unfortunately, has that right now. But, there's definitely things in the works. And with the recruiting that's going on at Tech, the guys that they have coming in, they can definitely, take that up and be able to do some things with that and flip that script.
Yeah, so we had a good showing at the ACCs. And the program over the last decade has really kind of been building itself into a top 10 power. This week, and kind of another first with 10 wrestlers qualifying for nationals. How big of a deal is it having 10 wrestlers make it to nationals?
It's a huge deal. We're one of 4 teams in the country that can say that. And one of those teams is not NC State, and one of them is not Penn State. So that's one thing we got up on both of those. And it allows you to score more team points because that's what you need. You need guys to score points in order to win and get into the trophy talk. Top 4, you get placements as far as the team titles. And that's what we got. We got 4th back in 2016. And funny thing is we beat Iowa by 1 point back in 2016. So that was kind of nice, and especially after that whole Tom Brands thing. And so it was enjoyable for that to happen. But yeah, so having more bodies there and more capabilities to pull off an upset or to have a deep run in the tournament, some surprising matches that might happen. It always happens. You'll have in basketball you'll get the 5-12 upset. There's always one out of the 4. You're definitely going to get some upsets. And the good thing about wrestling is if you lose once, you can still run it back. You can come back and get 3rd. Actually talking about our 16 team, our 174, he was ranked, I think, 8th. He lost the first round, and he came back and he won 7 straight matches, and he got bonus points. And so he scored a lot of points for us to help us out. And he was able to, be a part of the team to get that trophy. So it was nice. And so you can battle back. So just because you lose once, you're not done. You keep going.
Nice. I think also too, in the way you mentioned the points and everything, in my head says if you have 10 guys, it's easier to get a chance to win a national title. Where if you're with 8, everybody's got to win. Everybody's got to go deep. So for our 10 wrestlers who have made it, Hunter Katka, Andy Smith, Hunter Boland, Makai Lewis, Connor Brady, Bryce Adani, Caleb Henson, Tom Crook, Sam Latona, Eddie Ventresca. And yes, it is very tough to say Ventresca. Let's just go with Eddie.
Right.
We're going to give you 4 categories. And I want you to put each guy or multiple guys in them about where you think they're going to land. And I'm going to lead with the first one here. Who are you just glad that they got to the national championship stage?
Well, Eddie being one of them, especially for the year that he was having, up and down. He had some good matches. Then, Cooper coming in there and taking over for a match against Pitt, and then him getting the starting position back. So it's, for him to be there is definitely a good thing. It's got to be a good psyche. Redshirt freshman, so he's got 3 years left, something to build upon. So it's definitely good for him. He's got a tough draw, and where he's at, he's going to wrestle a kid from Missouri, first round. He lost 6-4 during the end of the year or the beginning of the year. So I mean, he could flip that. You never know. So like I said, and he's he's wrestling I think actually in northern Colorado. Sorry about that, but yeah. So I mean, Eddie can flip the script and actually get a couple wins. Now, to become All-American definitely will be a little bit tough for him. But like I said, he's got 3 years. He can build upon this. All the greats have done it. Latona's done it, and Andonian's done it. So all the guys you got to get there first, and then whatever happens, happens. If you have a good weekend and you get a medal around your neck, that's perfect. But first, you got to get there, and having all 10 guys there is perfect. Now I got 3 more guys in this category.
All right.
But and I'll preface this is that, Connor Brady, like I was talking about before, he should be happy that he's there, but he also should be having a drive because he's got the quality to get there, to be an All-American. He could get there. Same thing for Andy Smith. He's very good, very solid, good defense. Obviously, he got to pull out the win against NC State. So he too has that quality to be able to get over the hump, win a couple matches in a row, get into the blood rounds, be able to get into that All-American fight. And we'll see what happens with him. And then Hunter Kaka, he's got the pedigree to be able to do the same thing. But it's tough this time of year, and you're getting all the best in all the nation. Division I wrestling it's intense, and it's crazy. And that's why I stuck to Division II wrestling. So, because I definitely wouldn't have made it in Division I, but it doesn't mean that I don't love the sport as much, and I really enjoy watching these guys battle, and I feel for them and root for them hardcore. So, those are the 4 guys that I have in that category.
All right, Siegler, category 2.
All right, category 2. These are guys that have the potential to kind of take the step to get to that All-American level. Who do you got in that category?
And that's why I say I was close to putting those last 3 there with Brady and Smith and Kaka because they can get there. But I was looking at their draw, and it's going to be they're going to have to have a good weekend. They can do it. They have the capability and they have the skill to do so. And I'm pulling for them because I want them to do so. But it's definitely a higher mountain to climb for them. The person that I have in here for potential All-American is one of the freshman phenoms, Tom Crook. So he's a 15 seed. So, you get to the top 12 is blood rounds basically, and you got to get in top 8. So he can definitely take out some people. He's got some big wins this year. He's been able to take out a couple guys that have been ranked higher than him, and then even the close matches that he's lost against higher ranked guys, and then he can do it. He can turn it around. I just want to see him attack and be able to get to his offense, and because sometimes when he's lost, it's been like, okay, it seems like he's on his back foot, just waiting for it to happen. But when he's attacking, he can do it. And I mean, the fact that he's a true freshman and he's in the NCAA tournament is great. And there's 10 true freshmen that are in the tournament of 330.
My God.
There's 10 true freshmen, and Tech has 2 of them.
That's big.
That's elite, man. That's elite. By the way, shocked. We're 2 things in, and you've only got half the guys. So the next category is who is All-American or bust?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping they're all Americans because I don't want them to be busts.
No, we don't either.
But we got Sam Latona at 133. He's definitely, he's shown he can beat and wrestle with the big guys. He's had a couple losses where you're like head scratching. And then he's had some close losses too. So, especially with NC State Arini, he lost on the last 10 seconds, in the semifinals of ACC, but he came back, got third, wrestled strong, did what he needed to do to get to nationals. So I think he'll be okay on that. Hunter Bolin, redshirt senior, seems like he's been there 6 years, 7 years almost. It's his final ride. And he's been an All-American before. Last year he didn't get it. I think he went 1-2 last year. So he's kind of a disappointment on that piece. So I'm sure in his mind he's ready to let loose, get back on that podium. So I think he's definitely going to do it, or else he'll probably feel a little bit bad if his last year he doesn't get that taken care of. Then these next two were close to the next spot, but I don't think they're there yet. Caleb Henson, that freshman that I was talking about, 149. He's special. He's going to be enjoyable to watch over the next three additional years. Yeah, he's the 4 seed. He can, if things go as seed, as chalk is, he can make it, and he'll go up against a 3-time national champion and Yanni, who he lost to 6-2 this year. So it was a close match. So you never know. Like I said, it just takes one match, and Yanni lost this year too. So there's a potential, that he is beatable. So you never know, and that would potentially be in the semifinals of when he would meet him. So that's exciting to watch, and we'll see how far he goes. And like I said, he's got 3 more years after that. And then my last All-American or bust would be Bryce Andonian. You don't know what you're going to get with him, but you're going to get excitement, that's for sure. He made a great run last year being the 11 seed, and he made it all the way to the 3. He got 3rd place. So he won 6 matches last year. So he definitely earned it last year. He had a good weekend, and hopefully he does the same thing this year. He's got a good spot. I mean, in this quarterfinal he would be up against a freshman from Penn State, Levi Haynes, who just won the Big Ten. That would be a task, but he can use his seniority and kind of know, using his junior, national skills to be able to, take out Levi Haynes. So that's what I'm pulling for, and we'll see if he gets there and gets to the semis and see if he can get to the finals.
Right.
Go ahead.
Before Brian jumps in with the last question, of the 4 in the All-American or bust category, who's the one you think could win the national title? Any surprises?
I think it's Andonian. Could.
Okay.
He definitely could.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, I like his draw. I think he can take it to the guys that's in his side of the bracket, and then if the top seed remains, that's Austin O'Connor, who he lost to in the ACC championship, and that would be sweet to go to the national championship, face the guy that you lost to. Unfortunately, he's lost to him 6 times.
Oh God!
And he's lost.
Lucky number 7.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been close. This last one was close, and their styles just kind of are different. And so it's, O'Connor is a national champion, so it's not like he's a scrub by any means. So I think he could get to him, and that would be sweet to take him on and get that one win on the national stage, if he can get there and do that. So he's got the capability to do it, especially with that run that he had last year. He can definitely do it again, because he was 1 point away from being in the national championship last year.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And watching Bryce, it's always exciting. Like, you're always going to get some fireworks. So.
It is. You're like, how does he get on top from being where he was just at? He'll roll through a lot. He likes to get the body locks and throw. He's just comfortable in that position. And it's almost like he's inviting people to go into positions that he knows he can take advantage of. And that's something that, like, he'll reach back and throw people. He'll leave his head down on the mat to try to be like, okay, go ahead and throw this half in so you can try to, put me on my back, but I'm just going to roll through and put you on your back. I mean, it's crazy. Just seriously, just watching him wrestle, it's entertaining for sure. And it's head scratching too, because you're like, how are you doing that? But then when he ends up flipping the script on the guy, you're like, okay,
there you go.
Okay. Trust what he's doing.
I know, right?
So the last category, and by process of elimination, we're looking at one guy fitting in here, but who is the legit national champion contender on this team?
Well, you got to go with the champ, Makai Lewis. I mean, I know he was a champion in 2019, and then he took an Olympic year, and then it was the COVID year, and then he got hurt, and then up until last year's final, he was undefeated in the national tournament. 19 he ran, he was undefeated because he won the nationals, and then the next year when they had it in 21, he was hurt, but he wrestled 2 matches. He won 2 matches, got to the quarterfinal, and then he medically forfeited out. So those weren't technically losses on him. He just had to withdraw from the tournament. And then last year he made it to the finals, and he was seconds away from being a national champion again, because they took it to the double overtime rideouts. And so, and that's against Carter Starucci for Penn State, who is now a 2-time national championship. He's the number 1 seed in the weight class, but Matej is down below, so he wouldn't meet him until the finals potentially. Mm-hmm. And Matej can take out Mikey Labriola, who's the number 2 seed, and he lost to him this year, and it was in sudden victory, so it was in overtime, and it was a scramble. So Matej was actually looking like he was going to get him, and then he went off the mat, so they had to stop, and they restarted it. Matej got back in again, and then Labriola just scrambled and ended up on top. So it was a close loss, but I think Matej could definitely flip that and take the win this time, and even in the championship, we'll see how it pans out. I kind of think that's how it's going to go, but we'll see. I'm excited, and kind of one more thing about having all 10 weight classes, you got more eyes on you, visibility of the program.
Yeah.
And it's reflecting. I mean, in recruiting, I'm looking at who they've signed for who they're getting for 2023. Out of the top 200 in the nation, they have 6 guys. They got the number 9, so he's like the number 2 or 3 heavyweight. He's coming in. He's you guys will know him, Jim Mullen.
Jimmy Mullen, yeah, Jimmy Mullen.
Playing football too.
Yeah.
So that guy.
Yes, we do.
Oh yeah.
And then Sammy Sasso's brother, he's coming, and he's going to be either 197, maybe heavyweight as well. So I mean, they're going to have some good guys. He's the number 30 recruit in the nation, probably top 10 in his weight class. Then we got a Virginia boy, Rafael Hippolito. He's from up in Ashburn, and he's number 88 in the nation. And then we got 2 boys that are in the 141, 149 that are coming in. They're number 45 and 46 in the nation. Mac Church and Hunter Mason. And then we got another one that's ranked. So it's just showing you that we're getting top ranked guys. It's not just all people going to Penn State, Iowa State. We're definitely, we're taking some guys away, and they're going to be solid. The room wrestling is going to be great because, typically, I think the only people that we're really losing this year are Hunter Bolin, because he's a redshirt senior. He's all out. Mekhi Lewis, unless he wants to come back, he has 1 more year of eligibility. But he's been in college for a while, so he might be ready to move on and do things on the national team level. So we don't know. And then even Bryce Andonian, he has 1 more year of eligibility. He's a senior, but I don't know if he's going to come back or not. So, which he might, because he's lost 4 straight ACC titles, and O'Connor will be gone. So
there you go.
It opens it up for him because he's lost.
You might see a window like, all right, I can come back and get one here.
Exactly. So you don't know. And even if they're not coming back, we're going to have some solid guys coming in, filling those spots. And even with the guys already in the room too, it's just definitely something enjoyable. And I'll always say this, and I keep thinking, this is what's going to happen. This is going to be the sport. I think that Tech will get there if we want to get a national championship as a team. I think the wrestling team is the one that's going to have to provide it, because hopefully football will get there again. But I like the wrestling team's odds right now more so than the football. But they got to grow too. So
got it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Fuqua, man, we really appreciate you coming on tonight, going through this. I mean, for anybody that watches this and will be watching the national finals, you gave an unbelievable breakdown. Save some time on your calendar in the fall when we get close to wrestling season. Brian, he's coming back, ain't he?
Book
You will
it.
come on and give us a wrestling preview. We'll give you some weeks in advance. Luckily, it won't be tax season, so you won't be having to be in your office at 9:00 at night. But, brother, good seeing you as always. Hopefully, we can catch up sometime here in the RBA. You have a good evening, all right?
All right, you too. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it,
Go
David.
Hokies.
Go Hokies.
Go Hokies.
A heck of an interview there. We are going to take a quick pause from our digital partners before we get into all the recruiting talk tonight.
As we take a quick break, we'd like to tell you about getting your free website report from our digital partner, Grassroots Digital Marketing Studio. They'll tell you how your website ranks on Google, on-site SEO, and social media. No commitment to buy anything. You can get your free report by visiting grassrootsdigitalstudio.com/free-website-report. Now back to the episode.
All righty. Brian, without further ado, bring him in.
The man, the myth, the legend, Matej Sis, VTScoop. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. Can you guys hear me okay? Is the mic set up well?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you. We got you.
I was struggling a little bit backstage, but hopefully it's coming out all right.
Yeah. This is the first time entering the green room while we're midstream there, so little adjustments here in real time, but I appreciate that. Yeah, you sound good on this end.
Yeah, you sounded
Awesome.
good, man. We hope you were taking some notes during the wrestling lesson there. Clearly, that starts in a couple days. Clearly, we got a good shot at that. And before we get into the recruit talk, let's talk about this because you are a VT alumni. You got the wrestling team, big showing up in Tulsa this week. Let's talk about the women's team though. Win the ACC championship, and not only win it. I think everybody watched some of those games. They beat everybody's ass in those 3 games. It wasn't like it was competitive games. They dominated. And now they're a number 1 seed. They're going to be having games in Castle this weekend, which is unbelievable. And, looking at the bracket, our buddy Shelton has been saying it, Elite 8. That looks legit. And if they go to the Final Four, they're beating UConn. How's that make you feel as an alum to have that happen to your school?
I mean, it's awesome. Like anytime you're talking about the big dance, and especially like Virginia Tech with the number 1 seed next to their name, like that's incredible. It's like something you don't think about. Like, when it comes to men's basketball, you're hoping just to make the tournament. And then you're talking about the women's team, absolutely like it's just domination. Like the game against Duke was just, from start to finish, they did everything better. And it looks like not just making the dance, but having legitimate hope to go very far. And like, I would absolutely love to see like this Virginia Tech team face off against UConn. Like that would be unbelievable. Like the storied program of UConn women's basketball versus the risers in Virginia Tech. Like that's storybook stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's a game that can kind of put you in that big time national conversation, because really women's hoops is kind of usually dominated by 2 or 3 teams every year. If this is the year where Virginia Tech takes that step, that could be huge, especially downstream as you talk about recruiting in a few years, where you're getting the consistent and caliber players that the South Carolinas are getting every year now. If we're probably like 1 step away from that, and this could be that kind of cycle that puts us on the national stage, that kind of helps us take that step.
100%. Yeah, I was looking at the bracket, like I was a little surprised at how tough that is. Like Ohio State is in there, North Carolina, like there are some tough teams, but luckily if they make it all the way, South Carolina is a wagon. They're on the other side, so at least they get to avoid them. But yeah, the number 1 seed is huge, and obviously like legitimizes the program, like puts them in that upper echelon. We've been waiting for this for a little bit, and it's awesome to see that it's coming to fruition.
Absolutely. All right, so that's fun stuff to talk about. There's one thing that somebody on this program needs to address with you before we go further, Tally.
Matej, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Hey, you need to give me a refollow on Twitter. I've been following you for years. I've been following you on 247. I need that I need the refollow, buddy.
By the end of the night, it's coming.
There you go.
You the man.
He said the reason he joined the podcast was to get Matej to refollow, and that was it. That's the only reason he joined.
That's it. That's the only reason.
You know, you're a constant guest.
He saw our rundown of who was coming on in the spring. He's like, all right, I got to join now. Matej coming on. I got to get this out there. I got to get the follow.
Got to get it, man.
I have to be honest too. Like whenever I go to my feed, like I always see Tally on there. I'm feeling like
I'm stalking you.
You might as well be following him, right? You see him everywhere.
They see him everywhere. All right. Well, gentlemen, let's get into football talk because there is a ton of news and there are a ton of things we want to ask Matej. But yesterday, the news broke and it was announced, and today it was kind of discussed at the pressers. 2 new coaches hired. Let's start with the first. Elijah Brooks, the new running back coach. Elijah Brooks is coming from the Maryland program where he had been since 2018, producing some really good running backs to the NFL. Anthony McFarland, Javon Leak, Jake Funk, Tavion Fleet Davis. So right there, 4 years, 4 different backs. The bigger part with him, he was an 8-year coach at DeMatha. Anybody in the country knows DeMatha is a stud football program. And while he was there for 8 years, he had their best 8-year stretch. That's saying a lot about that program. So, William & Mary graduate played down there. William & Mary, if a guy plays football down there and comes out coaching, find a way to get him.
That Jimmy Laycock coaching tree is stud.
Joke, man. So, Matej, it's awesome you're on here because give us some recruiting insight about who he's recruited. Where do you think he'll be recruiting with Tech?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little awkward noting that Ramon Brown, Virginia Tech was in on. He's the main reason he went to Maryland. But, in all seriousness, he's a guy that has ties all over Maryland, like very well respected. Coach Pry was talking about him and saying how they were eyeing him for a positional coach while they're at Penn State. Like, this hire is not just about his coaching pedigree, but really about securing the state of Maryland. And, working in tandem with Bowen. Pry has a ton of connections there from his time at Penn State as well. He's going to be all over the state. And it's not, it is about him going to those high schools and where he does, have that great reputation. But it's also bringing these other guys on staff with him, like Bowen, like Pry, into the high schools and meeting these guys. So, it's huge for Maryland, especially when you look at how much talent comes out every single cycle. It's just huge in terms of recruiting.
The Washington Catholic Athletic Conference is just stacked with talent every year, and it's not just DeMatha. I mean, it's across the board. And obviously a guy like him that has the respect not only of that DeMatha program, but all those programs from having coached there for years, having recruited for the last 4 years of Maryland. This is just, to me, better hire than I anticipated, especially, when we were early on in the process. We were like, all right, we're probably going to be hiring a running back coach. There's going to be some shuffling. Who's it going to be? I think we probably came out a little bit better than we thought we would with a guy like Elijah Brooks.
What do you think about him, Tally?
Oh yeah, I think it was it was a surprise to me. I didn't know that he was even kind of on our radar, but it's definitely a welcome surprise because, as Matej said, like he's got a great background from the athletics up there, and Maryland, as much as they're throwing on our side, they're a program that's on the rise a little bit, and if we can get something to kind of as we seen, we played them a couple years ago, and we seen the outcome of that for whatever reason, but if we can steal some stuff out of their plates, like I'm all for that. We had Fontel on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about the relationships in recruiting and how sometimes you have to, get to 2-3 people before you get to the kid or you get to the coach. Somebody like a Brooks would know that lineage to go through. So I was excited about it.
Yep, I think we all are excited about that because that was a name we hadn't seen. And then you start looking up, was it Nick Cross, Ramon Brown? He's recruited some pretty high profile guys in his time at Maryland, in a short time at Maryland. So, I think it speaks for itself. And I think, we'll talk about some of the shifting in a minute here, but I think for the most part, Tally, you made a point today that in you looking at it and being realist, right?
Oh yeah, you gotta. I mean, you gotta send people to recruit what they like. They gotta be comfortable. Elijah Brooks is gonna be. I mean, he's gonna be recruiting running backs. Most of the running backs that he's gonna be recruiting to Virginia Tech, what do they look like? They're gonna look like him. I'd much rather send him than Stu Holtz to get me a running back. Stu, go get a tight end, a big white boy. That's fine. Go get him. But Brooks, we need you to go to you got to go into the 757. You got to go into Maryland, and you're gonna have to grab some of these running backs that we missed. Ramon Brown, he was committed to Virginia Tech for how long? Forever. And then they stole him away. Like, how many times have we been one player away from 2-3 games? Having that one playmaker at a pivotal position can change the trajectory of your football team. So I'm excited about it, man. I think it was a good move. I know we're gonna get into some more of the shuffling a little later, but I'm pretty stoked for real.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that. All right, let's talk about the second guy, a guy who on this program we got notified. Tally, if you remember a couple weeks ago, our buddy put in the name in the chat of Ron Crook. And Ron Crook is the new offensive line coach at Virginia Tech. Last year, he spent a season at South Dakota. Smaller program, obviously. But if you look at his tenure, really in the last decade, he was out at Stanford. Then he went to West Virginia. And then he was at Cincinnati when Cincinnati went to the playoff. Matej, I know offensive line is the toughest position for y'all. If any recruiting service, anybody trying to look at it. But where do you see Ron Crook, where do you think he's going to be recruiting? And is there anybody out there he's coached or recruited that has caught your eye?
Yeah, so he's mainly going to be out in like Ohio, Southwest Virginia. Obviously, West Virginia has a lot of contacts there. But surprisingly, like Virginia Tech is really hitting Ohio hard. This upcoming week, next week, there's, I think, like 25% of the visitor list is from Ohio. So he's already out there recruiting. He's already hit up a guy like DJ Tolliver, 4-star offensive lineman in Virginia, top 10 guy. He's already, hit the ground running. It's interesting because, like you guys probably heard a couple weeks ago, he was always number one in terms of the offensive line fit. And, Brent Pry has a lot of ties to West Virginia and contacted a bunch of people, got like raving reviews about him. Obviously, you talk about Stanford and their lineage of offensive linemen, like most of them go into the NFL. West Virginia obviously recruits at a similar level as Virginia Tech, but, they fight over a lot of, the same prospects. And then obviously at Cincinnati, building up that line, which I think is really important for Virginia Tech right now. You have a ton of young guys in the program, being able to develop them. Like we didn't see that a lot last year. And as good as Joe Rudolph is, and, as much as people rave about him, you really need a guy to bring in the young guys, build them up, and get them ready. Obviously, it's tough coming in with spring ball, about to kick off. So we'll see how like the scheme adjustments and all that change out. But if you're going to bring in anyone to coach up the offensive line, you want a guy with a ton of experience. So I think it's an all-around great hire.
Yeah, I when I saw it, I was like, yeah, this is a really good hire. It's a good fit. It's a guy that he's coached in zone schemes. He's coached in some power schemes out there in Stanford and some of that split RPO type stuff that was run at Cincinnati with Ritter there. So, I think there's a lot of upside to what he brings from a scheme standpoint, especially knowing what we're trying to move towards. And Tyler Bowen was talking about it today in the press conference, moving towards more, vertical running game to kind of set up those RPOs and get tempo going and things like that. And I think some of that was what we wanted to do last year, but I think this is more of an emphasis this year, especially now that we've got the personnel to run it in a little bit more of an effective way. And I think Crook's going to do a good job of kind of, filtering that down to the offensive line and making them more effective snap to snap. And that's the big thing. And if we get more effective, especially on first down, that's going to make their job a whole lot easier on second and third because you're going to put the defense in a conflict.
I mean, I agree. Agree with what Siegel is saying there. I came up for a game. Well, I think it was the Duke game a couple of years ago. I had to stay in Princeton, West Virginia, which was fucking crazy. Being a 6'2", 350-pound black man in Princeton, West Virginia is nuts. And I'm from Alabama, so I'm used to some redneck podunk shit. But it was nuts there,
Different level, Walmart, right? Different level.
Man, I walked in Walmart. I was like, this is definitely where they filmed Wrong Turn. It was fucking crazy. But I mean, shit. You got Ron Crook. He's from that area. I ain't saying he's from Princeton, but the West Virginia area, he's familiar with it. I think our best lineman last year came from West Virginia. One of our high profile players. Like, I never understood to going to Germany to get a fucking offensive lineman. You're in Virginia. Open the back door. There's some big ass boys out there that's pushing tractors and pulling tires and tell them to come play football. I mean, you got Crook out here wearing his hat backwards in the snow and rain with shorts on. That's an offensive line coach, man.
That's my kind of dude right there. That's my kind of dude.
Like, I wasn't a big Vice fan. You know what I'm saying? Just because, whatever. He's gone. Ran a couple of people off I thought could have stayed. But whatever the case is, he had him. He brought a certain nastiness to practice and to the line that me as a tight end offensive lineman like to see. If you're gonna get a penalty, I want you to get a penalty gouging somebody's eyes.
Yeah.
I don't want you to get a pre-snap penalty. Stomp on somebody's nuts when they're on the ground, whatever the case may be. I like that. Let's go, man. Like, I think it's a good hire. I got a lot of people that's been on Twitter talking about the hires and blah, blah, blah. I know we're going to get into it a little bit farther. I've been pumped up about this because I've been asking questions and I can't get the answers. So,
well, here's the thing, like with everything, Matej, and you probably did the same with the research, kind of similar to what I did. Well, when Crook's name came across our board, I started doing the research. I started looking up, and I'll be damned if everywhere he's went, the run game has improved. West Virginia, when they won 10 back in 16, they were like 13th in the country, and that was out of the Holgorsen air raid zone type running scheme. What they did at Cincinnati with Ritter in that RPO split, Brian, you were talking about the split zones with that.
Yep.
They took that team to a national championship. And they didn't get curb stomped by Alabama. Alabama eventually beat them. But it's not like they went out there and didn't just get beat down. So the man clearly knows how to coach an offensive line, and he's got that mentality. So, I feel like if you just see the name and it's not a flashy name and he was at South Dakota, dig deeper, read deeper. You'll start uncovering some good stuff. All right. So, boys, obviously, we got a new running backs coach. We lost a quarterback coach. We got a new offensive line coach. It means we still need 2 coaches filled out. And, the tea leaves were coming out over the weekend. Tyler Bowen moving to quarterback coach. Matej, you can probably speak to it best when it comes to recruiting, though. The last 2 prospects, quarterback-wise, that came through the door, who was their primary recruiter?
Yeah, Tyler Bowen. And again, this cycle, you got a guy like Davy Belfort, a guy out of Florida, 4-star quarterback. It's really his connection to Bowen. And, Kyron Drones, like when he came, it was because Bowen went there, visited him, took a plane, like convinced him to sign on the night. So he's good with, just bringing in quarterbacks, recruiting, identifying what the offense needs.
Tally, I'm gonna let you go because you've been.
Oh yeah, no, I was ready. So No, I was ready, but looking at just kind of how it's transpired, and we got to call no names. Everybody's on Twitter. If y'all ain't on Twitter, fucking with people, you need to get a life. That's the fun stuff to do. But I've seen a lot of tweets where people saying, I understand. I was out of our chat probably the most critical of the staff last year before the season started. I said we have so many new coaches in new places. I'm not expecting much. Everybody says, "Oh no, the we're gonna do good because of this, whatever." So this year, I'm a little bit more optimistic because I've seen some things and we've got some more playmakers. So now we're gonna fast forward to what we're doing. Brad Glenn didn't show me nothing. I think our quarterback play was the worst that I've seen since I've been a Tech fan last year. Not saying that's all on the coach, not saying that's all on the kid or kids, but I'm just saying from what I seen as a Tech fan last year, that was nothing to build on. So I don't feel like the quarterback coach we had brought anybody in. I mean, and he was an experienced coach. Everybody's saying he doesn't have experience in this, he didn't have experience in that. We need playmakers. We need people we need some coaches that can go recruit and get talent. When we brought Gerard in, the dodos that was coaching him that we figured out we didn't really care about, I don't know how much coaching they did. He just came in and played. Hendon just came in and played. You got to go and get some playmakers. So if Bowen can go and get some playmakers, this isn't a see all, know all. Like he's got an opportunity to just get it started, and then we can pivot next year. If we need to go get a quarterback coach that's going to be able to give us a little bit more development, I think we can do that. But for all you people on Twitter that's been talking about how laughable it is and horrible it is, I asked a question about 3 times. Give me some names of some coaches that are the best quarterback coaches in college football. I don't got no names because people don't know that. They know the player. You talk about the coach that coached at Clemson. He was coaching Trevor Lawrence. I could have coached Trevor Lawrence and he would have been good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not taking nothing from the coaches. I'm just saying people throw stuff out before they give it a chance. So I'm going to calm down a little bit. I'm going to let some other people talk. I'm going to pass it back to the panel.
Shout out Thomas Train for thinking I look like Tyler Bowen. So.
Yeah, we got Tyler Bowen on here tonight, y'all. Sigla, now you went.
I will say this though. So, ain't no way you confuse this short neck dude for Tyler Bowen. Like I ain't got no back. ain't no way you were that confused.
But Sigla, you got some points on this. Tally, basically what Tally's saying, and it's kind of going back to what Matej's saying. Matej, you talked about Belfort's a 4-star. Pop Watson's a 4-star. Drones is a 4-star. Tally, you're just saying, I want somebody that can recruit the room. If he can sell the vision of what he's doing, I want the best player there. Now, Brian, you probably agree with that, but I think you were going a little different direction more schematically when it came to why Bowen's a quarterback coach.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it schematically. So the way I'm seeing it, if you want to hire a quarterback, you want them to be good at probably one of 2 things. They either need to be excellent at mechanics and technique. They need to be an absolute stud at knowing what a scheme expects of their quarterback, or it needs to be a combination of the 2. Bowen checks that second box. So to me, that's good. We also, between what the NCAA rulings are changing and the guys we already got on staff, we got Chris out there that can assist with some of the more finer points of quarterback mechanics and technique. We also, when we look at positions that get a lot of work in the offseason outside of the coaching structure, the quarterback is the one position that gets third-party folks coming in, working with them specifically on technique and things of that nature in the offseason. So you've got those things that are already building towards that. From a technique standpoint, Tyler Bowen knows what the quarterback's supposed to do within the offense. I can guarantee that. So when you put those 2 things together, to me, that means he'll be effective. Now, obviously, I think some people would want both in that package, right? So yeah. The optimal idea is that if you want to have a quarterback and OC coach that they are very technical when it comes to the quarterback position, and they know schematically how the quarterback works within that structure and then can call the plays well. That's the optimal. But I think given the situation we were handed this late in the cycle, I'm okay with this. Now, I'm not saying it's not risky. I think there is some risk with moving a guy that has not coached the position into this spot. But, some of the comments thrown out with laughable and things like that, like, it's a calculated risk, even though it is a risk. And my other point is that, some people were talking about, well, you should have hired a quarterbacks coach. And I was like, well, if you hire the quarterbacks coach, you probably don't get Brooks or Crook potentially, you get someone else in those spots. And they were like, well, no, you can, you fire Stu Holt. I'm like, so you're saying it's laughable that we're moving the OC into the quarterback coach's role, but it's not laughable that you're going to fire someone that in March that you decided in December and January you were rolling with.
That's true.
I mean, if you want something that's laughable, it's laughable deciding in December and January he's your guy, but all of a sudden because two guys took promotions, he's not your guy. To me, that says I don't know what I'm doing a lot more than moving your OC into the quarterback coach's role.
Well, the other part, let's just jump right into it. Stu Holt's going back to tight ends, and he's a special team coordinator. So if you fire him, you not only have to fill his position role, you also have to find a special teams coordinator. And
we have two potential on the roster now, so that would be between Cheetah and Crook, you've got two that could potentially take that role, but you're still out of position coach.
Yeah, but are you going to ask your cornerbacks coach, who has a pretty young room, hey, go take over special teams, or you're going to ask Crooks to coach all line, offensive line, and special teams like that? Again, that's more laughable. And now we're
running back and tight end are definitely the positions you would prefer having your special teams coordinator role because they are the least demanding. From a position standpoint.
Yep.
So unless your head coach has it like we had with Frank. So
yeah, well, there's only so many that do that. Well, let's talk about Stu Holt in the tight end room. Tally already made his point about Stu Holt probably going into the mountains of North Carolina and mountains of Virginia, finding him some big kids. But Matej, what does his track record with tight end look like as far as recruiting goes?
Yeah, when you look at his background, he's pretty much split between being a running backs coach and a tight ends coach. And I do want to hit on one more thing just with the staff in general. I think what gets lost in translation a lot and is just putting these coaches in a box where, they have to be, this one positional unit. When you listen to the staff talk about, the offensive staff, they're all communicating all the time. They're always, multiple guys are helping out in certain positions. It doesn't fall under one guy to just do everything. And I was just thinking about this in terms of Bowen, and I'll get to Holt in a little bit. But Bowen, I was lucky enough to go to the coaching convention in Northern Virginia, where I was able to talk with a bunch of the coaches, really understand what their vision is. And without going too much into depth of that, I was really impressed how technical Christ was in terms of what he expects out of the quarterback, different schemes, talking with high school coaches in terms of what they're doing and being able to relate to them, how you can change things around. And then additionally, Bowen's knowledge of the entire offense also impressed me because you look at last year's offense and you can say, okay, this is a train wreck. Nothing's working, but looking at it in a different way where, if this one block happens, or if this is, the identity we're having here, if this is the type of play we're running, but we can't run it because we don't have the personnel, those things make a huge difference in terms of the entire outlook of the product of it. So I think again, just people hyper focus into, this guy didn't do it before, he can't do it. But, as an offensive coordinator, he's working with all these guys. He's flowing these ideas around. And then I guess for Holt, obviously today he was talking about having Nick Gallo, having Benji, Daquan, how excited he was for him. I think he's going to be a good fit, and obviously has worked with Bowen quite a bit. So I think it's an easy transition. I don't know how much you can expect out of the tight end room to change, but I'm excited nonetheless.
Well, he smirked when he talked about Daquan Wright. He smirked like maybe that was the most athletic tight end he's ever had. Tally, tell me about this, though. I want to go back to the special teams part because as me and Tally, Brian chatted today. Tally, you play tight end. How many special teams units did you play on?
Well, as a tight end, I played on a lot of our special teams units. Your running backs are like they're not going to play on many unless they're returning the ball. Kickoff, you may have a running back there. Tight end, you're going to be a up guy that's going to be a wedge stopper. Stopping a wedge buster. So a lot of the tight ends are probably going to be involved in those special teams. So I think that helps. But also, like Brian touched on a little earlier, you do bring a guy in like Crook that's got a lot of experience. And guess what? He's coached special teams as well. So it's kind of all hands on deck. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the coaches know what situation we're in. They know that we can't afford to have another year like last year if this program wants to move up. So I don't think that they're relaxed. I think that they have some intensity, and I think that we're gonna watch it, and I think some people are gonna be surprised. I think we're gonna have a good year. When I say good year, I don't want to give predictions yet, but I 100% said last year we will not make a bowl game. It's going to be a struggle. This year I'm a little different. Like I feel like we got to get to a bowl game, and I feel like we'll get there. So I'm gonna be watching. I'm gonna be at the spring game. I'm gonna be looking for my boy Matej, seeing him out there with the ladies. Hope he ain't married.
All right, Siegler, you say you got one more thing you want to hit on this before we move on.
Yeah. So my last point is just looking back at the offense last year and kind of what's going on with Bowen and everything on that side of the ball. To me, when I looked at some of the parts of last year, it looked a little bit square peg, round hole sometimes, and it looked a little bit too many cooks in the kitchen. And I know that, a guy like Brad Glenn and a guy like Joe Rudolph were brought in as kind of somewhat backstops for a first-time Power 5 OC in Tyler Bowen. But I feel like at some points in the season, it was a little bit too much of a lot of ideas that were out there, but not necessarily a cohesive plan from top to bottom, from kickoff to the final whistle. I think with having Bowen moving into the quarterback role and also having what looks like a full control over what this offense is going to look like top to bottom, and it's going to be shaped in his vision through this whole process, I think that's going to give us a better idea of what this offense is capable of. And it'll help us, I think, evaluate, what these coaches are capable of this year a lot better, especially now that we've got some talent to go in that, on that side of the ball as well, where we can really kind of say, okay, well, this is what's working and this is what's not. We know we have the talent now to execute these things. So if things aren't happening, we can at least know what we're working with a little bit better than last year, where there were times where sometimes it's like the product was so bad I couldn't really evaluate, all right, is this a player issue? Is this a coach issue? Is this a scheme issue? Sometimes it was just so ugly, it was hard to really differentiate.
Absolutely. Good points, guys. Good points, everybody, on all this stuff. But let's get into it. Let's talk about the 2024 cycle here. That's why we brought Matej on. Matej, thank you for all the insights from going to the convention last week in Northern Virginia, your insights on some of the guys they've recruited. That's really helpful getting to where we are now. But let's start with this one out the gate. I had a look at the top 20 today. First of all, y'all changed it from last week. Y'all did some updates because my numbers changed. So top 20 looks as follows. We got 6 in the greater RVA. We got 5 from the 757, 5 from Nova, 2 from the Eastern Shore. Both those guys top 10 with y'all. 2 from Southwest Virginia. So there is talent all throughout the state this year in the top 20. You go to any region, you can find a highly rated guy. With that being said, with this staff's effort and that statewide assault from the second they laid feet on the ground last December, you think it's going to pay off with this type of spread this year?
I do think so. And I think they've done, like, obviously we can go back to the last regime under Fuente and say, like, they were visiting high schools maybe once every couple months. Like, these guys are persistent when it comes to keeping in contact, making those inroads. Like, I talked about the coaching convention, and I was talking to a lot of the coaches, and they were just saying, we're so happy that Virginia Tech is back in this area. I was lucky enough to go to the Nova one. Evan and Doug on our site were able to go to the Richmond one. Unfortunately, they didn't do one in the 757 this year, but the feedback from the coaches was completely different. Like, the connections made, everything. Like, they're making inroads for the future. They're brutally honest. They didn't just do these conventions, and I know there's a lot more that goes into it, but they want to help out these high schools to cultivate talent for many years to come, help them with their schemes, help them with, the problems they're having, using their insight as collegiate coaches to help them out. And I think it's paying huge dividends because, in recruiting, it's oftentimes viewed as a one-way street. Like, who's your top guy? Like, send him here. This is what we can do for him. But it's never the other way around. And so I've been really impressed with how they're relating to these coaches. The fact that they're seeing them every couple weeks, staying in contact with them. And you can see it from the recruits. Like, anytime we write a write-up, like, the amount of just, like, human connection between these coaches and the recruits are paying off. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to come out here and completely take every single guy from the top 20, but, in the long run, it's paying dividends. Like, they have people welcoming them into their high schools, and they're making those connections, and that's what's important in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about those relationships and how the two-way street is working there, because I think not a lot of people talk about that as much. Relationships is not just about showing up in FaceTime. It's about, working together to help each other kind of build each other's programs there. And I think that success is going to build both directions there. So that's important. Let's talk about the RVA. Me and Curtis's stomping grounds here. 6 of the top 20 are in the RVA area. We had Fontel back on. He's kind of started to put up a wall a little bit in the 804, which we like to see. So we've had some success the last couple cycles here. Do you think we can land at least 2 of those RVA recruits that are in the top 20?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rayner's a guy that, we've already put out a crystal ball. He has a good connection with Cam Fleming, just a really good defensive back. Noah Jennings is another guy that we just put out a crystal ball for. So there's already 2. You're talking about guys like Chris Cole, Lamar Miller, who's visiting this weekend, I believe. Eric Smith is another one. Like, there's a ton of talent in Richmond. Fontel, he was the guy for the staff in terms of recruiting last year. Like, the amount of success that he had, and it's not just like picking out these guys to try to influence future cycles. It's like, these are legitimate playmakers in Richmond that they're able to quickly bridge that gap and get them onto campus, get them, to represent their in-state school. So absolutely, Richmond's always going to be one of those big areas for Virginia Tech, and, their ceiling goes as high as Richmond. And, I really think it's important in every cycle, but this cycle's another great year for Richmond, and I think they'll at the very minimum too. I'm expecting like 4 to 5. To be honest.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Stated
here.
I
like that.
Definitely.
I like that.
Yeah, Matej's he's getting us a little too excited now. I gotta be a Debbie Downer, I guess, and kind of go with the next point here, Matej. So last cycle, the Hokies got 0 757 kids. I know the staff has been rebuilding those bridges and, trying to break back into that Tidewater area. How you think we feeling and how you think we looking in that area for this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been an interesting area. It hasn't been as easy as Richmond, Nova. It's definitely going to take some time there, but I think especially this cycle, like you look last year, a lot of those guys were predetermined.
Yeah.
Like you're talking Penn State, Notre Dame, like they're already going to these schools, and Virginia Tech is like showing up at the door like, we're still here to build these connections, but we can't build the connections with the current crop of recruits. And I felt like 757, especially last year, was heavily inflated towards the top. This year feels, there is a lot of high-end talent, but overall, I think it's a lot higher. Like there's a lot more recruits that are D1 worthy from the 7.5. And, like a guy like Keelan Adams would have never even picked up the phone when Virginia Tech called a couple of years ago.
Right.
And, he's one of those guys that they brought onto campus. They have one black jersey that they're willing to give out and have recruits try on. He's the guy that, they made the exception for. Like they're whether it's, something as silly as that or as minor as that, like they're pulling out those types of stops for him. And I think it is going a long way. He's in constant communication with Virginia Tech. I'm not saying, he's basically every program in the country wants this guy, but he's building that connection now. He's coming back to campus on a consistent basis, so you never know.
Yeah.
And then you have other guys like Assad Brown, lockdown cornerback. Like he's super high on Virginia Tech. I thought he was going to shut down his commitment early. That's how much he liked Cheetah. He's a guy that, Virginia Tech desperately needs to build around and, kind of elevate his profile on the college level and show that to everyone else in the 757. Like you need a more recent example of a guy that can really shine on the college stage. And, Assad Brown, I'm excited for him.
Yeah. I want to hit on a couple of, or something a little different off script here. Because you brought it up. You talked about the uniforms. You talked about having the one black uniform. I know that you're the recruiting guy. That's why we got you here. How, and we argue all the time. I'm an orange guy. Everybody knows that. How excited are the kids about the uniforms and the different colors whenever they're on recruiting trips?
Yeah, they're very excited. I'll say too, like the production team, like the media team, especially, obviously it helps getting, additional staff, but the way they do photo shoots, the way they bring kids into the locker room, the amount of gear they have, like how everything is set up so well, it's definitely made a huge impact. So, obviously recruits love that stuff. And like, I wish they did have a couple more black jerseys or, maybe they're just saying that and they're hiding the rest in the back, but it's a big impact.
I like it.
The contract is up soon, so we might be getting some fresh ones coming out here soon.
I'll say this. The jersey they never wore after 2010 that they should have, the Boise State jersey was sick. We lost that game, but that was a sick jersey that they never pulled out again. And it's like, why? They did so much in the mid 2010s with some combinations, and some were good and some were but that was like such a good jersey, and we lost the game. Like, who cares? We've lost in other colors before. Bring them back.
That's a whole nother episode.
That is a whole nother episode. Wait. All right. So let me pivot to this. It's good to hear the stuff with the 757. I got the sheet up here. I looked up Keelan. Holy crap, is that? Literally everybody in the country's offered him.
We need him.
Nuts. He's in y'all's top 100. Y'all have him rated as a 4-star. Now, let me talk about this. And talking about Virginia still. Last year, 2023, huge cycle to start that rebridging process. 12 players. But let's be realistic. The highest rated was number 18, Caleb Woodson, who I know Brian's really high on because he thinks the way he's built that outside linebacker spot, tally high on it too, that he could probably come in and maybe by next year be pushing for it. But can the Hokies take a step on this trail? It's great they got that many players. And can they get a few top 10 prospects? And you've already mentioned two they're high on, but are there any other guys in that top 10 besides Assad and Keelan that they definitely have a legit shot at and could be in Blacksburg this time next year?
Yeah, I know Fontel's working on Chance Wiggins. He's a guy that, obviously, I think he's a 4-star.
He is.
Mason Wade's another. Yeah. Mason Wade, I think, just cracked the top 10. He's kind of moving up. He's an absolute gym rat. He hits the gym like 3 times a day. I think he's listed at like 280. Last season, he was playing at like 305 and then came back down. But he's just a warrior. Like, he's unbelievable. And then, DJ Tolliver, Crooks is on him now. Kashawn Henderson is another guy, but shout out to Dwight, by the way.
Shout out
My
to
God. Victory life.
And then I think, one sleeper that I'll throw in there, I think, is Josh Clark, who's in Nova. He's a DB. I know Derek Jones is high on him. He's a guy that I think could really elevate as this process moves along. Like, I would expect him to be a 4-star. And I think Virginia Tech sits really well with him right now. So there are numerous guys. Like last year, I looked at the top 10. I was like, there's no shot. Like, I want to give people good news. I want to say, like, yeah, maybe there's a possibility, like some of these Penn State guys with the Pride connection, but there was absolutely no chance. I think this year there's a chance, like realistic shot at least 3.
Okay.
At least 3. Oh, wow. I mean,
Good news.
we're happy, right?
And I
Tell us 3 right now.
Hey, when we were talking earlier today, I said Mason Wade. So I'm glad to hear Matej throw Mason Wade.
Yeah,
in.
that was-
I'm high on Mason Wade. I think he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm glad you gave us a little insight on him because we were kind of talking a little bit earlier about how he was kind of all over the board a little bit, I think, kind of rated different with some different entities out there. But to hear you talk about him and, I mean, to say what you said, because me and Brian were kind of talking, offensive line is the hardest to judge for high school. So to hear you say he's a gym rat, like he's putting in that work, and that's where it starts with a lineman, because once you get to college, the main thing that's different is you're not blocking 150-pound linemen anymore. You're not blocking 200-pound defensive linemen. You're starting to get into the 250s and the 300s. So that I think that translates well for him, and I hope we go out and grab him.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot. We were like, it's hard to recruit because of the variations in skill level and things like that. Whereas skill positions, athleticism can always scale up. But when you look at, okay, well, this guy's pushing this guy around, but can that scale up? It's hard to really judge that, especially when you look at the talent level. So that's why you always see with offensive linemen, if you can recruit size, you at least know at worst you're going to have a good scout team body. Mm-hmm. So if you can get a guy that's that ready, you're at least raising the bar of where you're at, and then you kind of can go up from there. And hopefully, with Crook coming on board, we can get these kids developed, and hopefully we find some guys that are able to kind of contribute for us right away, because we need it. We're thin, especially at the tackle position, looking long term. So. Let's see, and I'll kind of go ahead and pivot off of Curtis here. Let's see, how well positioned are the Hokies to kind of take that next step, both organizationally and kind of with how they stand with the players, of getting some more of those top 10 caliber players in the boat?
Yeah, definitely. I think the conversations this year have elevated quite a bit. Like, being able to go in on these guys, not just like this cycle, but last year, that makes a huge difference. Like, a year ago, you're talking about these top 10 guys, whether it's Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, like unable to really start that relationship. And now you're talking about multiple year relationships with these guys. And I think, with how big the staff is, how good the recruiting staff is, and then having proven recruiters on the staff and getting more guys in, I think they're positioned pretty well. Like, obviously, it's a huge leap from last year to this year to even be in consideration for, 5 of the top 10 guys. I know I named a few earlier, but I think they still have to make that next step and really earn those commitments. Like, there's a lot of guys that are very high on Virginia Tech, and I think could have shut down their commitments already. So just seeing that closeout phase, I think is really what I'm eager to see next.
I know you've hit on a couple of different kind of states and places that we've been and places that we're going moving forward. But I just wanted to kind of go back to that, Matej. Last year, Tennessee was a state that we hit pretty hard. We got a lot of talent out of that state. When you talk about the Aiden Green and Chance Fitzgerald and a couple of other guys there that we were able to pull in. Do you foresee that continuing, or do you see us maybe, picking up another state and getting talent out like we did out of Tennessee?
Yeah, I think, in a lot of ways last year, what happened in Tennessee, like Sean Quinn deserves a lot of credit there. Like he's made a lot of inroads there. And he's just great all around, a great guy to be a representative of Virginia Tech. But I think like a lot of those battles were towards the end of the recruiting cycle, picking up guys based on connections, like knowing high school coaches in the areas, kind of knowing the situations of the players, whether, they weren't a fit at one school and their recruitment opened back up. But guys like Aiden Green came late in the cycle. Mose Phillips was another one that they were on for a while, but took a long time. I think there's going to be other territories. I don't expect the same type of success. Like they're still going to recruit Tennessee, but Ohio, North Carolina, obviously Maryland now are kind of the big ones in terms of out of state.
All right, what about North Carolina? Where are we hitting? Because, it's right there. What areas are we going to be hitting in North Carolina this year? Because you've got three. You've got the Triangle, the Triad, and Charlotte.
Yeah, so I think the staff is taking a huge emphasis on Charlotte itself. Like, obviously, there's been an emergence with Charlotte Christian, Charlotte Catholic. There's Providence Day there. There's been a lot of, even before the staff, a lot of inroads in Greensboro. Salisbury's another up-and-coming area right outside. They're sitting well right now with a three-star edge, Derek Dandy. He's a guy that's, we put out a crystal ball for, really likes Virginia Tech, has been on campus a few times. I think he's going to visit here coming up. James Nesta is another guy. He's an inside linebacker, high three-star. He's visiting actually on Thursday. And then they have some other guys, Deuce Walker, another high three-star cornerback. Edwin Boyer, who's a 6'8" offensive lineman, who's high on Virginia Tech. And then obviously Cheetah's been recruiting Brody Barnhart, who's a safety. So there's just a ton of talent in North Carolina, and Charlotte specifically is a major footprint. I think Virginia Tech, like when you're talking about where most of these kids are going to come from, I think they're looking to add, as many as they can out of Charlotte.
Yeah, and when we look at Charlotte, Charlotte's an area, I think, people have talked about it before. There's more Hokies in the Charlotte area than there are UNC and NC State grads. Yep. So it's a very Hokie-rich area that already has some of that kind of mindset as these kids are kind of coming through school. So that's kind of, I think, a very good jumping off spot for what they're trying to do in Carolina for sure.
And I'll tell you something else. You starting to mention the names. I've got the pages up. I'm a nerd. You're mentioning three guys there with Dandy, Nesta, and they're three top 20 players in the state. It's not like we're getting into the 30s and the 40s where we're scraping the barrel. We're talking about legit three top guys in the top 20. And that says a lot to me, because it's like, Tally, jumped out making the point. We went to Tennessee. We found Chance Fitzgerald. That might have been the best recruiting story all year, right? Because, Matej, if people aren't familiar, tell them what happened, because we weren't exactly in fight with little dogs to get that guy to come to Tech.
No, there was a lot of big guys on him. I know Michigan, towards the very end, was, they were really high on him. And, luckily the staff sold a lot of, that he – well, I'll say this. There was a lot of good conversations going for the Hokies, and I think that, ultimately the relationship with his parents were the most realistic out of the top schools that were recruiting him, but he's a phenomenal player, phenomenal wide receiver. Obviously came on late towards the end of the cycle, but I think the persistence of the staff and showing how much they cared about him. I know some of the other schools were in on him, but overall, yeah, I would say that Virginia Tech just really stayed on him in the end, and that was the difference in it.
They didn't quit, which says a lot about this staff and the way they recruit compared to prior years. All right, I'm going to go tally here and be a little Debbie Downer negative Nancy. All right, so in the last few cycles, in the states of Georgia and Florida, two of the biggest football states in the country, we've only had 4 recruits. 2 are holdovers, 2 are offered by this staff. These are 2 talent-rich states. And the northern part of Georgia down into Atlanta, that's in the footprint that Brent Pry continues to preach about. Why haven't we seen as much action in those 2 states? Because I feel like us as Hokie fans, I mean, we just start throwing out names. You think Brandon Flowers, you think Isaiah Ford. There's always talent. There's obviously some guys from Georgia I'm missing. But why haven't we hit it that hard?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And, it's one that in terms of, these massive territories that Virginia Tech is after, whether it's, Brad Glenn was a big connection last year in terms of Georgia. Obviously, Tyler Bowen has some ties to Florida. But, for whatever reason, it didn't work out last cycle in Georgia. I know they're evaluating a lot of guys. And then Florida, you're talking about like Mario Kendricks, Norrell Pollard, like guys on the roster right now that are fan favorites. And I think kind of getting back to those roots is important. I'm still trying to figure out obviously with the 2 new guys, they're going to be shifting kind of the recruiting region. So I'm still trying to figure out who exactly is in charge of Georgia, who's in charge of certain parts of Florida. So I still think it's very much a work in progress. And, a lot of the other areas we've talked about have kind of been established among the staff. So I still think they're building those inroads, and maybe it'll take time, but I'm with you. Ball players just come from those states, and you got to find a way. Even if you're talking about, a guy rated in the 60s in Georgia, he's probably comparable to a top 20 guy in Virginia, there's just so much competition in those states. So, hopefully as things progress, they're able to land some more talent from there.
Yeah, and looking at, we've got a bunch of offers that are out there, but we haven't seen necessarily a whole lot of positive traction out of Georgia and Florida so far this cycle. And we haven't really tapped into those, Delray Beach and Duval connections that we've seen previous staffs pull from, both going back even to Beamer days. What is you think is a reasonable amount of commits to kind of expect from those 2 states this cycle? Is it still kind of in that 1 to 2 range, or are we looking to maybe take a little bit of a bump up?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than that. Obviously, still a lot of evaluation, still trying to bring guys on the campus. I think, the name that jumps out to me the most in terms of Florida is Davey Belfort. He's a guy that's super high. He named Virginia Tech in his top 3. I think with Texas A&M and Michigan State, if I'm remembering correctly. He's a guy that I'm looking at as that's Bowen's guy right there, seeing if they're able to land him. So if they are, that's one off the bat. But in terms of some of the other names, still waiting to see what comes out of there. Just haven't heard a lot of concrete info in terms of recruits just yet.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It's early in the cycle. How do they get the guys up? And we were looking the other day, and Daquan Wright ranked in the mid-30s. And you start saying, is that a place like in Georgia or Florida we circle? Do we circle in the mid-30s to go find talent? Because what did we do, Brian? We pulled up the state of Georgia. We looked. All right, the 35th ranked player in the state of Georgia this year is a 4-star offensive lineman. I think we'd all sit here and be like, all right, sold. 6'4", 300 pounds. Sold. Just get him on campus. And, I think that's the point that we have a lot of. Virginia itself is a talent-rich state, but we are surrounded by so many talent-rich states, and we have connections, or we did have connections to the state of Florida for years, and that's why I look at those two. And like you kind of said, and thanks for kind of clearing it up. It's like we don't effectively what you're telling us is they're still having to build the relationships there as the program of Virginia Tech. And if we take a look at Brent Pry, it's almost start close, slowly build out, slowly build out, slowly build out. And again, I'll go back to North Carolina. Those three in the top 20, and you saying they are feeling good and they have good, things going for Tech, that's big. But again, it's the same way with like Florida. You look and you think, you talk about Davy Belfort. Davy Belport's per 247 is ranked 88. And you go look at him and it's like, okay, he's an 88 ranked player in the state. That's really low. And then you look a little bit closer and it's like, well, y'all have him as an 87. Y'all have him as a top 50 quarterback. He's still in the top. He's 88th in that state. He's still in the top 450 nationally. That's crazy to think that. And you look at his offer list. I mean, you mentioned A&M. You got Michigan State on his trail. You've got all sorts of SEC, Big Ten, and ACC schools offering him. So, I mean, again, and if he's not Pry, if he's Bowen's guy, why not pull the trigger? If Pop Watson was Bowen's guy, you pull the trigger, you get him in, and you compete. The transfer portal was generous to the Hokies so far this year. We all will admit that. But just kind of looking at the numbers and hearing things, how much movement do you foresee after spring? And do you think with how big the class could potentially be for this cycle, how could it affect that?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of movement this spring. I mean, Pry was kind of talking about it earlier today, just saying that, they're constantly evaluating the guys, whether it's in the hunger drills during the winter. Now they're getting into practices. I foresee quite a bit of attrition coming. And, whether it's, I think they would be open because once the transfer portal opens back up, there's going to be some names in there that I feel like, if you can grab them, plug them in, they're veterans, whether they have connections with any of the current staffs from former schools or whatnot. They could nab another guy or two out of the transfer portal, but definitely there's a vision in place for getting, whether it's the next recruiting class, getting a plethora of talent in, just kind of making the roster how Pry envisions it, just kind of working all those things out.
Well, now, let me ask this, because as I take a look here at the 247 transfer portal, I get into the top 50. Most of those guys are committed elsewhere. But is this a chance after spring? Could there be potential former 247, top 300 players that eventually maybe went to the wrong fit? Maybe, went somewhere, coaching changes happened, and now not effectively that they want to move out, but okay, the guy who recruited me isn't here anymore. The scheme's changing. I need to get in the portal to try to find a home. And when they're that young, is like a redshirt freshman, essentially they're still an unknown product, right? It's almost like recruiting a high school kid again.
Yeah, 100%. I know there was I'm blanking on the name right now, but I know that there was a 4-star guy out of Virginia that was committed to Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah.
And just backed off. So that's one example where, something shifts or it doesn't work out, release from your NIL or NLI. But, that's, an opportunity for Virginia to open up that conversation. I know that guy is looking at Michigan, Ohio State, some of the other Big Ten schools right now. I know Virginia Tech is in contact, but, there's going to be several cases like that where you have a 4-star guy, whether, even the high 3-star guys that, release from a certain school, a freshman that doesn't see where they fit into the equation, all of a sudden they're on the move. Obviously, the transfer portal brings craziness, and you can't really predict what's going to happen. But this staff is very in tune with it, and I think that they're constantly evaluating, checking every day. And if there's a way to make Virginia Tech better, they'll take that opportunity.
Sounds good. So let's talk about this then. We with the last staff and just recruiting in general over the last few years, it seems like roster management hasn't been great, and we've kind of gotten to a head the last couple of years with that in terms of the on the field product. From a roster management perspective, what position group can we not afford to have low number of commits in this cycle?
It has to be defensive tackle. Like, it just has to be. You look at the roster now. Again, you have like Kendricks, you have Norrell Pollard, you have Fuqua, like, who could all potentially go, and then you got to backfill that. I think Wilfred Penne is a redshirt junior at this point. Obviously has an extra year, but if that's your number one guy going into the next season, then that kind of shows you how you built that room. I know that they're looking at a guy like Micah Penix, who's not rated right now, out of Virginia. He's coming to campus soon. They have Emmett Laws, who's an absolute stud from DeMatha. Obviously, the DeMatha connection there now.
Mm-hmm.
He's visiting as well this weekend. He's a guy that I think is like the absolute number one priority target in terms of defensive tackle. I would
get Brooks on that man.
Yeah, exactly. Like they need to pull out all the stops for him. But again, it's one of those positional units where, like, it shouldn't be that hard to evaluate guys in high school, but somehow it is. And I wouldn't be surprised if, Virginia Tech is going into the portal next offseason and plucking out two guys that are, have done it, have the body type they're looking for, and can play in their scheme. So I understand, like, you don't want to just reach and get guys if they're not going to be able to compete, but definitely defensive tackle is one of those positional groups where they got to get it right.
So you're pretty much saying we got to kind of front fill and back fill.
Yeah,
definitely.
Portal heavy, 2024 class heavy.
Man, hit that portal as hard as we can. I'm all for it. And another, I guess the next question that we'll kind of go with, next topic we'll bring up is what you kind of led into. We're closing out the 23 class. We kind of know what we have and what we need, but looking back over that class, Matej, who do you think was the most important recruit in that cycle?
It's a good question. I know it's kind of the easy answer, but I would say Laith Ganem, because not only, like, when you have a guy like that, and I think what gets lost in translation a lot in terms of looking at 24/7 sports profiles is, like, when a guy commits kind of early, like, they don't report offers anymore, but there are still teams that are actively after them. And I know that West Virginia was a major force. Penn State was going up against Virginia Tech. There are some other Big Ten schools in the mix that really wanted him. And he's very, like, he already has rave reviews on campus. He's a guy, obviously, with Crooks that, they'll build a good connection there. But he was someone that a lot of schools wanted. And even though his offer list is, pretty insane to look at on the site, like, add 20 more offers to that. Like, there were a lot of guys asking about him. UNC was another team that was trying to take him late in the cycle, really trying. But he stayed committed the whole time. So obviously Joe Rudolph is gone, but he really believed in the Virginia Tech vision. He's an early enrollee, and I think he's going to do great things with Crooks.
Matej, I gotta go at something else too that I've been wondering. This is just me and you. We don't have to get Curtis and Brian involved in this. You ain't on. You're not being recorded. You can be honest with me.
He's not being recorded on a live stream.
You're not being recorded on live. Let's be honest right now. A lot of us fans think when a player commits to certain schools, they get a bump or they get a drop. Is that true, or is that just fictional thinking?
It is fictional, but I do like the narrative of it. I like when people are like, I like when people see, well, I don't like it because when it happens to Virginia Tech, it's always a drop.
Yeah.
Penn State, it's always a bump. But it's more like, and I don't do rankings myself, thankfully. Otherwise, I would have every recruit in my DMs. But guys, when they're evaluating, like when a guy commits, like they're looking again at that tape and making another decision on it. There are times, especially like Virginia Tech, like they don't want someone committed without being evaluated in terms of like, if it's an unranked guy that they haven't gone around to yet and he commits to a school, like all of a sudden he jumps to the top of the list in terms of who they're going to rank next. So a lot of the times when you see like a Mose Phillips, like he got a ranking like 2 weeks after he committed.
Right.
All right. So he has put the myth to bed. Tally.
I should feed into it.
I want to. Man, we got the man on. I had to ask.
That's a good question. All right, I'm going to ask you this question. Even though you've mentioned Ganem as the most important recruit, there's 11 guys enrolled, including him. Which one of those guys do you think, we're talking in August, chatting with you in some way, shape, or form, and we're hearing from camp like, this guy's killing it. This guy's going to be on the field for whatever unit he's with. He's going to get some special teams action. Who are you hearing, do you think, in 6 months, right? 6 months, yeah. 6 months, they're on the field. Huh? Math is hard.
I'm going to give you two answers for this.
All right.
One on offense, one on defense. But a guy like Aiden Green, another early enrollee, I know he's listed at like 6'1.5". I think he checked in at like 6'2". He was 160 on his profile, and he's like closer to 175.
Okay.
Like he's been a guy that's been turning a lot of heads. And I know they brought in like a ton of transfer portal talent. Well, transfer portal talent into the wide receiver room, but I think he's a guy that can scratch the 2 deep because he's not like he's versatile enough to play in the slot, but he can also play out wide. And I know it's maybe it's easier to put him spot reps in the slot, but I really think he could be someone that comes in as the 5th or 6th wide receiver next year. Like I think they really want to build a rotation there. And I think he's a guy that could produce. I'm not going to say like he's going to have over 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, but he's someone that I think like we'll see pretty early on. And I think he could establish himself definitely in the 2 deep.
Before you go on to your next player, Matej, do you know how welcoming that is as a fan that had Caleb Smith last year, the only wide receiver catching passes, for you to say you think we may have a early impact player being our 5th or 6th wide receiver? Hey, I told y'all, man, I'm feeling good this year.
I'll say this too, because I like getting the morale up, and I'm always hesitant to pick wide receivers. Because, a guy like Tucker Holloway, like we are hearing great things about him last year getting into the 2 deep, and obviously we saw some flashes on special teams. But yeah, I really do think Aiden Green does have that type of talent that could establish himself in there. And if he shows up and the system works, like obviously no freshman's going to do well in last year's offense, but I think a more simplified version, getting more guys on the field, not making the scheme as complex this year, I think is really going to help some of the younger guys. And then defensively, like surprisingly, like I've heard a lot of good things about Mose Phillips. I know that safety is obviously, you're looking to build depth there. Jalen Stroman, Nasir Peoples are obviously like the 2 guys you're looking at there. But I think outside of that, like, Mose Phillips can push a Jalen Hoyle in the 2 deep and really establish himself. Like he's a hard hitter. He's a physical guy. He does remind me a bit of Chamari Connor. And, I think he could make an instant impact. Like he's really impressed. And I think he goes beyond his rating. Like he was just kind of one of those sleeper guys late in the cycle, and he's showing up and playing well. So I think he's another one that could sneak in there.
All right, let me ask this, because I feel like this is kind of something that can kind of put a bow on this 23 situation. So, we talked a lot about relationships. We talked about how the staff is really rebuilding those bridges in Virginia. Let's take Highland Springs and their players out of the mix because we know the relationship there with Lauren Johnson and everything else. What's a player or a school that we targeted this cycle that we got to recruit from that could really benefit the Hokies for future cycles?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the cop-out answer here. And I'm going to say Dante Lovett, DeMatha, Elijah Brooks.
I forgot he was from DeMatha.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he was excited.
This makes it easy, right? Like we sent you this question over the weekend before the hire was made, and you probably were thinking about it. Elijah gets hired. Oh, that's so easy. DeMatha.
Well,
and I'll say this too. I don't know if it's more of like a DeMatha specific connection more than it is about like putting Maryland on notice. Like, Virginia Tech is here. It's not just about Maryland anymore. Like, you have a guy that worked with Mike Loxley who's now recruiting for a rival school, like that knows all the high school coaches, that knows the culture there. You have a guy like Dante Lovett could have been an example of a guy that was very important to keep. Like, a lot of schools wanted him. I don't know if they're going to get a guy like Tavani Mizell, who's, I think he's a 5-star running back out of DeMatha, just decommitted. He's probably going to head to the SEC, but, between Brooks, Bowen, Pry, like Maryland in general is, I'm very excited to see all the recruiting news come out of there.
Well, and it's the third highest offer list per 247. You've got Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland's third at 22 by itself. And looking, it's a talented class. And you mentioned DeMatha. Well, that's St. Francis. St. Francis puts out good players. We got Cam Johnson, who got some PT last year. Good counsel. It's a lot of places up there. And now, again,
Gonzaga and St. John's. I mean,
Gonzaga and St. John's, which now with a whole new coaching staff, we maybe can go back in there. Let's not talk about that whole situation. Jesus Lord. But it's like, I think the Mansour Delaney thing, I was mentioning this to Tally and Brian earlier today, maybe one of the biggest selling points. First of all, his brother, who is already looking like going to be a unbelievable stud. It's a Kendall Fuller situation. Little brother or big brother was good. Little brother's elite. But you start thinking about Mansour coming in, and they basically, you're good enough to play, go out there and play. And how easy that is to sell. And then you start going into those schools and say, hey, listen, if you come here and you're good enough to play, you're not going to sit on the bench. So in these other schools, guess what they're going to do? Because they've got to keep all the 4 and 5 stars happy. You might have to sit 3 years when you don't get to play. And that's still the most, I think, as a fan, and it's probably all of us, you see talented players go somewhere and sit and sit and sit. And then finally they have to start and they show out. But you sit here and you know for a fact, dude, you could have went anywhere in the country as a true freshman and started playing. But you went to Alabama, you went to Georgia, and, they're going to develop me. Like, dude, you're already developed. All they're doing is taking their brand and sticking it on you. And anybody could do that. Sorry, ran over. Anything else y'all want to ask him? But we done almost went 2 hours. It's closing in. Is it 11 o'clock yet?
Not quite.
Are you going to the spring game?
I'm trying to.
Okay.
So I'm trying to. I haven't made accommodations yet. I'm working with Evan G. Watkins on that right now, but definitely trying to.
Well, if you and Evan need a bodyguard, y'all let me and Brian know.
Absolutely.
We're gonna be there. We're gonna have some BCP gear for you, and we're gonna be ready to grab some recruits and put some rankings on them.
Let's do it.
All right, gentlemen, have y'all checked the Twitter sphere? Has anything broken? Anything interesting happened in the last 2+ hours?
Let me check and see if I got my follow yet. No, he's still on here. Never mind. I give him a look.
No. Check it. You need to check it.
Nope, not yet.
It's coming. Hold on. Live. This is a huge moment for Tally.
This is pretty big, man. This is gonna be you. Hey, we got it.
Hey, documented on live on air.
We got it. And he looks like a movie star on his picture on there too, man. He's got the perfect hair and the blue eyes, man. He's ready on that.
Listen,
It's a flattering photo.
hey man, listen, we can't thank you enough for coming on. This is your third time on. It is always a blast to have you. Circle July. Figure out when your vacation is so we can circle the date, because in July after camps, we know there's going to be some things breaking. We definitely want to have you back on again, man.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to it's always so fun between the times we do it to look at the names we're talking about.
It's true.
And then the names that come in.
Yeah.
Like,
what's changed, what hasn't, how much movement we've had.
You can say his name because you stamped it July. Unless something doesn't change, he's going to Pitt. And he went to Pitt.
Yeah.
You stamped it. I think you broke some Virginia Tech fans' hearts that night, but you were just being real with us.
The man knows his stuff.
He does, man. Well, listen, that is going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast, brought to you by Main Street Pharmacy in Blacksburg with our guest, Matej Sis. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Talibans.
Visit our website, boundarycornervt.com, to listen to all of our episodes. Also, visit our newly launched merchandise shop, The Boundary Corner Store. While you're there, do not forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube account, still growing. Your favorite podcast source, including Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. As always, we let our buddy Jason Long, he plays us in, he plays us out. Check him out at his website, jasonlongmusic.com. There, it's going to link you to all of his music, including Apple, including Spotify, also his YouTube account and Facebook pages. He's got a new single coming out soon. I know he's working on it. He's also working on something for us if we can get certain guests in the hey, this could be a big surprise, but he's working on some things for us as well. And I think Jason might have just quit. I'm looking here. I don't see anything. It's like he may have gave up. He's in the studio. He's in the studio. So we thank you for listening. And as always, let's go.
Hokies.